I'm enrolling in Medicare soon, and it had me a little confused. Then I found myhealthpolicy.com. With myhealthpolicy.com, I could go online and compare Medicare Advantage plans from some top-rated national insurers, including $0 monthly premium plans. I can learn about plans in my area and talk with a licensed insurance agent if needed. myhealthpolicy.com has made doing my research a whole lot easier.
My choice, my Medicare, myhealthpolicy.com.
Hello and welcome to Audiogyan. This week on Audiogyan, we have Kedar Jape. Kedar is a very old friend, a film writer, a director. He was awarded the Best Actor Award by Indian National Theatre in his college days. His maiden short film, Baangdya, was world premiere at Cannes Film Festival in 2010, Short Film Corner Series. A thinker, a teacher, and an artist who believes that his guts and intent to create compelling content. Please welcome Kedar Jape. Hi Kedar, thanks for being on the show. So today's discussion will be around films and perspectives. I would like to start with asking you, what do you think? Should art depict society, or should society evolve by looking at art?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Kedar, for having me on. Should art depict society, or should society evolve at looking at art? Now, this is typically, if you look at it in a very objective way, it's a chicken and egg story. But I am just going to go a little back in history and just say that the founding fathers, initially, when somebody like Bharat Muni wrote Natya Shastra, they had put a framework. And I would love to believe that when they put that framework in place, they had probably thought about the impact of art on a human mind. And even as a communicator, it is very important to understand that what we say or what we do using a particular medium, it could be any medium, it could be films or any other medium, what kind of impact it will have on the audience. So I think rather than we saying that should society follow the art, I would say the art has to lead and guide the society. It becomes very imperative for an artist to have that point of view. At least I believe in that.
But don't you think if you put a framework to art, then it becomes restrictive? Isn't that a trade-off?
I think creativity thrives in limitation. So when you say that there is a certain thing that is happening which I want to depict, at the same time I know that if I were to depict it in a very stark and a naked fashion, it would have a certain impact on the mind of an audience. Now, if I can do it creatively within a certain use of the limitation and still create an impact or still create an emotion or evoke an emotion that comes close to that particular thing, I think that is where the challenge of being a great artist comes in.
Okay, I would like to take a slight detour here and want to ask you, how much do you think commerce has impacted art?
A lot. In a sense that fundamentally, the minute we start looking at entertainers and entertain people who are getting entertained, if we have that bifurcation, then obviously then there is the element of commerce will come in. So if I were to entertain myself, then there is no commerce involved, because I would be happy writing a poem for myself or singing a song for myself. But the minute I start singing for somebody else, or I start creating something for consumption of an audience, then there's an element of commerce that would creep in. I think it depends on the artists to understand the meaning of art, what they are trying to give in lieu of money.
Yeah, but if you see Indian cinema, they have more conclusive endings as opposed to foreign cinema or experimental films. Do you think there's a commerce angle attached to it, or it's just pure experimentation?
No, no. It would be wrong to say that there's nothing conclusive in a sense that we. For example, I mean, we have a boy and a girl who fall in love, and then something happens, and then towards the end, it's a happy ending. They get married. So now, is that conclusive? I mean,
To a certain extent,
yeah, I mean, we would love to believe that it's conclusive in that sense, but we don't know, right?
Yeah.
But then maybe in the next year, if there's a sequel, probably they'll fall out, and there could be a divorce. But I'm just saying that. So we should not really get into that kind of a. I mean, I wouldn't want to get into whether European cinema or experimental cinema has inconclusive endings or. But then there is a cultural angle to it. And see, we as Indians, we would tend to have to take something home, okay, a feel good factor or whatever, or even a little sad thing to take along, and then I would say that is something which probably we are accustomed over a lot of time. I mean, through the ages. I mean, I would say that. When I used to watch Ramayana for 9 days during Navratri, and my grandmother used to take me. The 10th day, we used to have the effigy of Ravan being burnt.
Correct.
So in that sense, we would say that okay, now it's the end of the evil, and then then after this Ram Raja aa gaya. So in that sense, there would be some conclusion to that. So that the 9 days of whatever we saw of Ram as a character being going through all the ordeal, and finally he's being redeemed or whatever, and then so I think this has been an impact over generations on our mind. So probably to that extent, I feel that we are culturally tuned to have those kind of endings, but I wouldn't really want to say that is a norm. I mean, there are all kind of new filmmakers who would make all kinds of films.
But then how do you know your story is finished? I mean, how do you decide when to stop?
What really happens is two broad ways to look at a script is if a script is driven by the plot, and then there is a script that gets driven by the characters. So there are two generally. So that is where normally we tend to go with a script which is generally run by a plot driven scripts, and that is where we then, like you said, the minute the plot ends is normally where the film also ends. But when it is a character driven script, it becomes slightly more difficult. Whenever we try to explore that part of script writing, then the coming back probably to your earlier questions, we could probably have a little more inconclusive endings, because people really we don't know how people would react.
Correct.
But if it is plot driven, then I know that okay, this is happening and this is the end of the film.
So in that case, when it's a character driven plot, is there a real need for having an antagonist or protagonist?
The antagonist and the protagonist are, see, the whole idea of a script or a play or a film or whatever we are presenting is to evoke or create a certain emotions in the mind of the audience. Okay, now that happens when there is a certain amount of conflict that is there. Now that conflict may be between people, between nature, or and humans, or whatever. So whenever there is this conflict, and then whenever there is a resolution of that conflict, we go as an audience, we would go through that entire journey, would traverse that path, and then we would feel a certain emotion that the maker of that film or the play or the artist really wants to convey.
Correct.
So for that, this is a medium, or this is an element, creating an antagonist or a protagonist or whatever. Okay. So in that sense, they are elements of art.
Yeah, agreed. But since, like, if you have seen Godard or Rishikesh Mukherjee or any of that category of filmmakers, they tend to make a more realistic cinema where there need not be an antagonist or protagonist. So what's your take on making like more realistic cinema, or something which is which takes the audience into a fantasy world?
Well, that's slightly. I don't know how I would want to look at this question. See, every film has a slice of life to it. So at that certain level, So even if it's a fantasy, which is not real, which is really which is absurd, would still have some elements based in truth. So to say that Godard or somebody or Satyajit Ray was a person who made realistic films, or who had that, and someone else who would make a total fantasy, are they a different kind of filmmakers, or one is bent towards realism while other is bent towards something else? I really wouldn't look at the art of filmmaking in that spectrum. So I would just say that they make films which they feel they are comfortable with. They want to evoke a certain emotion with the audience, and they want to use that medium in that way. So it's like a brush with a painter. Now, if you say, oh, this painter has drawn a realistic portrait of Kedar, and while the other painter has drawn a cartoon of Kedar. So now, which is better? Well, it's a take. Yeah.
Quite interesting perspective there. But that puts me in the next question, which is, how do you define, or how do you, I mean, I know it's very subjective, but how do you define that this movie is good or this movie is bad? I mean, are there any parameters to gauge, or it's just purely opinion driven?
See, I think it's taking on too much of a responsibility. I mean, it is almost on the verge of arrogance. The way I look at a film, or any art, or a piece of theater or whatever, the way I look at it is, like you said, it's pretty subjective. I look out for the honesty in that piece of art. If one is honest in making that film, and the best part about filmmaking is that the camera never lies. It will always capture that piece of emotion. So if I see that that honesty, it could be a fantasy, or it could be a tragedy, it could be a comedy, as long as the script writer, the maker, the actors, all the elements that are there in the film are doing their best and being honest to that particular piece of art, I think that is good art. Then the second part comes, कि वो commercially क्या चल रहा है, because there's a commercial angle to it. This film is a great film. Now, whether that is true or not, again, is a matter of debate.
But it could be well marketed as well. I mean, there are a lot more parameters there, right?
It last 10-15 years, at least last 10 years, what has happened is that, and I'm talking specifically about the film market and the film industry, there is a huge amount of consumption in entertainment. With mobile phones coming in, with 4G coming in, people are now going to consume a lot more entertainment than what they used to earlier do. So for a filmmaker, the number of people I can push my film to and get them to see that film is a huge challenge. And then all that depends on is the the dollar value or the rupee value that is spent on marketing. So if I have a stronger money muscle to push my product or my film, then my chances of getting it watched by a few 100,000 people are more. And then they liked, or they liking or not liking the film, then would be the next thing. So yes, of course, the commerce part is there, but that is not the parameter to say that the film is good or not.
Kedar, considering the time constraint, I would like to conclude this discussion with one last question, that what made you get into filmmaking? Why did you quit your earlier job?
I worked in the Silicon Valley for a few years, and I was there in the US when the 9/11 happened. I've seen the bad times in the US. And somehow when I went through all those times, the only thing that kept my head above the water were writing. Writing scripts or doing something, and at that time I was also learning filmmaking. So those thoughts somehow kept my head above the water during those turbulent times. And somehow I felt that if this was something that was keeping me alive, then probably this could be my soul's calling. it was not that one day I just woke up and said, okay, now I want to do film. I think it's a process. It slowly unfolds itself. But I came to a point where I told myself that I wanted to make films. I wanted to make films that were the roots were the Indian roots, because India is a minefield of of really great stories. And somehow as filmmakers we have not been really able to bring it up to the international standards, or we're not able to grab those eyeballs, or we're not able to present our stories. That Ramayana is any better, or any this thing. It's been there for 5,000 years. But then is there a film on Ramayana or Mahabharata or one of these classics which is being consumed like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, and and there are sequels of going on Pirates of Caribbean. What are Pirates of Caribbean? I mean, we are talking a different class altogether when we really talk about all these classics. But we are not even there. We are still caught up in costumes. We are still caught up in some ideas of archaic ideas. Whatever. But then if we can present that, and if we can present it in a scenario where in 2017, 2018, 2019 teenagers can go out and watch those kind of films and really feel good about it, I think I have made an impact if I were to do that. And then there's a whole angle of folk which we have not explored. I mean, we've like 28, 30 states. Each state has a different language. There's a different folk, music and song and dance and stories, and there's different interpretations of classics. I mean, so every state would have its own Ramayana, and every state would have its own, stories of Mahabharata, and then somebody would be praying to, Lord Shiva, and then somebody would be praying to Lord Ravana. When you go down, there's some temple, I am told, is of Ravana, and they say he's a benevolent king, which goes against our understanding of Ramayana. But then then we are living happily. We coexist. We live together. We understand. We assimilate ideas, and we live our lives. So in that sense, I think there's a lot we can offer to this, world. Cinema is only 100 years old. So it's a new medium. So if we can explore that medium, and then of course all these new mediums like virtual reality and all these are coming, but I think the content is far more important. Correct. You can use any medium, but if we have the stories right, if we can tell our stories, I think that is far more entertaining. And I feel that as a filmmaker, I want to make those kind of films.
I totally agree, India being a mine for cinema. On the closing note, would you like to tell anything to our listeners?
So I thank you for having me on, and I hope you have a great year to come by. Yeah. So I would love to be back on your podcast with a different topic, maybe sometimes.
Sure. And that's it from today's Gyan session with Kedar Jape. Thank you, Kedar, for giving us your time. Really appreciate it. Stay tuned for more Audiogyan next week. Till then, bye.
We expect a lot from our homes. They're more than a place to hang your hat. They're where you try your hand at gardening and new recipes. Rest and recharge. Work and play. And that's why at Home Advisor, we're committed to keeping your home up and running. Whether you need to repair an overloaded appliance or you're looking to create a backyard retreat worthy of a summer staycation, use the Home Advisor app, day or night, and we'll find a local pro to get the job done right. Whatever you need, we'll do everything to fix your everything. Download the Home Advisor app today to get started.